Today, a federal judge in the case of Minnesota versus Kristi Noem gave the federal government a Monday deadline for submitting a written response to the states of Minnesota's lawsuit accusing the Trump administration of conducting an illegal federal invasion of Minnesota. That sort of quick response and short deadline from a federal judge indicates that the judge is taking the case that Minnesota has brought against Kristi Noem and the Trump administration very seriously, as is everyone else living in Minnesota. Today, the Minnesota Star Tribune editorial is titled, "Minnesota is under siege. This cannot stand." The editorial says Minnesota has endured unrest before. What the state is now experiencing looks and feels different. Battalions of armed federal agents are moving through neighborhoods, transit hubs, malls and parking lots, and staging near churches, mosques, and schools. Strangers with guns have metastasized in spaces where daily life should be routine and safe. It feels like a military occupation. Heavily armed and masked government agents are prone to confront any American they encounter in the street, but especially people of certain colors, accents, or styles of dress. The encounters are often violent. The federal agents operating under the insignia of Immigration and Customs Enforcement or the Department of Homeland Security, functioning largely anonymously, have disrupted the life of large swaths of a state. The occupation of Minnesota by ICE cannot stand. The president of the Minneapolis City Council, Elliot Payne, was shoved by an ICE agent in this video while documenting ICE's actions. Here is what Elliot Payne said today.
It feels like a military occupation. It feels like we're under assault by our federal government. We're seeing people walking around with assault rifles and full military gear, driving around in armored vehicles and, harassing U.S. citizens. There's a lot of direct assault, and particularly how they're roughing up U.S. citizens who are just legal observers. They're there out with their cameras, and they will go and confront them. They will tackle them. One of my constituents had their hand broken as they were apprehended, and then they will just dump people off without medical care after essentially torturing them. And this is the most un-American thing I can imagine.
The New York Times reports, quote, local concerns over the federal government grew on Tuesday when 6 federal prosecutors in Minnesota resigned over the Justice Department's push to investigate the widow of Renee Good and questions over whether the shooter would be investigated. Without enough federal prosecutors in Minnesota, federal agents might not be able to bring federal prosecutions in Minnesota now. CNN reports that the Pentagon is trying to round up military lawyers to send to Minnesota. It is extremely unlikely that military lawyers will have enough previous experience as federal prosecutors. Donald Trump and the section of his brain called Stephen Miller believe that America wants a violent crackdown on Americans, but polls prove they are wrong. A new CNN poll shows that only 26% of Americans say the killing of Renee Good last week by ICE agent Jonathan Ross was an appropriate use of force. Only 26% think what Donald Trump and James David Vance are telling them to think about that killing. A substantial majority thinks the killing of Renee Good was an inappropriate use of force. 56% of Americans say that Jonathan Ross's decision to shoot and kill Renee Good was an inappropriate use of force. And those 56% of Americans are completely right, of course.
And in Minneapolis, protesters were in the streets late into the night after another shooting by a federal agent. The Department of Homeland Security claims the agent shot an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela following what they say was a targeted traffic stop. DHS says the agent was running after the migrant when he was attacked by 2 other people from a nearby apartment who, along with the migrant, hit the officer with a snow shovel and a broom handle. According to the DHS, this is their account, the agent feared for his life and fired shots, hitting the migrant in the leg. The agent and the migrant were taken to a local hospital. And just moments ago, President Trump weighed in, threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act unless, as he put it, the corrupt politicians in Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE. And Mika, this was certainly a marked escalation. Invoking the Insurrection Act would allow him to mobilize far more federal assets and troops.
Let's go right to what's happening on the ground. Joining us live from Minneapolis, MS Now reporter Nnamdi Igwanwu. Nnamdi, describe, first of all, the overnight clashes.
Mika, you can still see just evidence of the clash, and the sun is starting to come out here, and you can see more clearly just how intense things got. All of these white marks, just some pepper balls, remnants of the pepper balls that were used by federal agents as they tried to keep the crowd yesterday in control. I can tell you, being here now, several hours later, you can almost still taste the tear gas in the air. There have been several times that we have had to kind of take a break and go to a different area because there was just so much used that it is still pungent in this air. But the clashes yesterday, a result of tensions that have been simmering all week since we've been here, that boiled over after another shooting, ICE-linked shooting of an immigrant they were trying to apprehend. Overnight for hours, we saw federal law enforcement work to control dozens of very, very angry, very upset protesters who responded in kind with throwing things like fireworks and other objects at the federal agents, who then responded with the use of pepper spray, pepper bullets, a ton of tear gas, and what are called bullet balls that essentially, when you throw them, they create a flash, an explosion, and send rubber pellets everywhere. We were here on the ground yesterday for hours.
Is a major reaction. Again, it's hard to see, and we'll try to get a little bit closer here in a minute, Abby. But there is a growing crowd here that is increasingly angry, that is following ICE, what we believe are ICE officers or other immigration agents throughout this neighborhood, screaming at them, telling them to leave in the strongest possible terms they can muster here. Meanwhile, ICE, trying to push back this crowd, was letting off tear gas canisters over and over and over. And at one point, Abby, they were going off all around us, and actually it became so chaotic that one bounced off my foot and bounced off my side, and that's when we got separated because the smoke was everywhere and we were having trouble reconnecting. But now we're back. Our fearless photographer Jonathan Shearer was right in the center of it, catching everything. If you guys are rolling on it, maybe we can run that video later. But that is the scene here, Abby, and it's quite chaotic, and it's going more so.
And back Whitney, as we're talking, if you need to move or relocate, please do. Stay safe while you are out there. But I want to ask you, because 6:50 is the time that, according to the Department of Homeland Security, this incident occurred. It's been now several hours. Is your sense that the reason that there are still ICE officers or federal agents on the scene is because they're doing something, they're doing active enforcement, or maybe they're investigating the shooting? And the folks that I'm hearing chanting, are people chanting? Are they blowing whistles? What are they doing on the ground?
They're chanting, they're blowing whistles, they're screaming at them to go home. You're going to hear more flashbangs in a second, I think. It sounded like one just a moment ago. They're surrounding these immigration officers and letting them know without any ambiguity that they do not like what they see and they want them to leave. This has been an ongoing scene throughout the city of Minneapolis after the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. The city has been quite angry. We've seen multiple protests, not just in Minneapolis, but all around the country. Certainly now, this is giving new reason for people to protest. Sorry, I'm just watching. We're here. It's louder than it looks. So I'm trying to figure out, Abby, sorry I keep looking away. But
so is it, what can you estimate?
There are things going on.
Do you have a sense of the size of the crowd, and are more people?
Today, we will discuss how changes to long-term residency rules can affect planning, perception, and confidence, while short-term visitors remain unaffected. This discussion is not about any specific country, government, or event. Instead, it focuses on general patterns that often appear when administrative policies are updated, especially during periods of increased international attention. Let's begin by clarifying an important distinction. Recent administrative changes apply only to individuals who intend to relocate permanently. These updates do not affect visitors, tourists, or people entering for short-term purposes. Temporary stays, brief travel, and limited duration activities continue under existing guidelines. This distinction matters. Long-term relocation and short-term travel serve very different purposes. As a result, they are often governed by separate rules, processes, and evaluation criteria. When changes occur in one area, they do not automatically extend to the other. However, timing can influence perception. Policy updates sometimes coincide with preparations for major international gatherings or periods of increased travel. Even when changes are limited in scope, their timing can raise questions among travelers, students, and professionals who are considering future plans. Understanding the intent and boundaries of such updates helps reduce confusion. Administrative changes related to permanent relocation often focus on eligibility, documentation, and long-term integration considerations. These processes tend to be more detailed because they involve extended residence, access to services, and long-term commitments. Short-term travel, by contrast, is usually designed to remain accessible and efficient. Visitors typically enter for tourism, business meetings, cultural exchange, or temporary study. Maintaining clarity and consistency in short-term access supports economic activity, cultural connection, and global exchange. This separation allows systems to function smoothly. By keeping long-term and short-term pathways distinct, administrators can address specific needs without disrupting broader travel activity. That said, perception plays a powerful role. Even when visitors are unaffected, repeated adjustments to residency-related processes can influence how people interpret openness and stability. Individuals planning to travel may wonder whether changes signal broader shifts, even if official guidance indicates otherwise. This is why communication is essential. Clear explanations about who is affected, who is not, and why changes are being made help manage expectations. Transparent communication reduces uncertainty and prevents assumptions from filling information gaps. Effective communication also builds trust. When people feel informed rather than surprised, they are more likely to plan confidently. This applies to travelers, students, professionals, and families alike. Another important factor is consistency. Consistency does not mean policies never change. It means that changes follow clear logic and are explained in a way that aligns with existing frameworks. When updates appear coordinated rather than abrupt, confidence tends to remain higher. Administrative systems often evolve gradually. As conditions change, processes may be refined to improve efficiency, fairness, or alignment with long-term objectives. These refinements are common and do not necessarily indicate restriction or closure. Understanding this context helps interpret change more accurately. Not every update reflects a shift in attitude. Many reflect internal optimization or response to new information. Another concept worth discussing is public attention. When an area prepares to host a large international gathering, attention naturally increases. Media coverage expands, questions multiply, and policy decisions receive greater scrutiny. This heightened visibility can amplify reactions to otherwise routine administrative updates. In such moments, clarity becomes even more important. Providing straightforward explanations helps separate fact from speculation. It reassures visitors that short-term access remains unchanged while clarifying expectations for those considering permanent relocation. Long-term relocation involves additional considerations. Permanent residence typically requires evaluation of documentation, background information, and long-term planning factors. These processes are designed to ensure sustainability and mutual benefit over time. Because of this complexity, updates in this area are not unusual. What matters most is that criteria are clear and processes are applied consistently. When applicants understand requirements and timelines, uncertainty decreases. For visitors, reassurance is key. Clear confirmation that short-term travel remains unaffected supports confidence. This reassurance encourages continued engagement, tourism, and participation in international events. Another important principle is preparedness. Individuals benefit from reviewing official guidance before making long-term plans. Understanding current requirements, timelines, and documentation helps avoid frustration and delays. Preparedness reduces stress. When expectations are aligned with reality, planning becomes more manageable. This applies equally to long-term applicants and short-term travelers. Adaptability, also plays a role. Administrative systems may adjust as conditions evolve. Applicants who remain flexible and responsive to updates tend to navigate changes more effectively. Flexibility does not mean uncertainty. It means being prepared to respond to updated information without assuming worst-case outcomes. Another consideration is public confidence. Confidence grows when systems demonstrate reliability over time. Even when updates occur, consistency in short-term access reinforces stability and openness.